Right, I'm going to start then by talking about a non-controversial topic. Islam in the United Kingdom. And so this has been in the news already, but I'll not. Viewers are probably already aware they're a very news-heavy lot who follow a lot on social media and all the rest of it. So you'll probably already know this. But look, I'm going to say this polling, I think, is deeply troubling. So I said, what must happen for us to wake up from our multiculturalism malaise? Because nearly half of the British Muslims polled by the pollster are tipping their hats to terrorists in the form of Hamas. They want a blasphemy ban on cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. They want to basically put British values up entirely for auction. And there's a really staggering number of those who reckon that Jewish people are pulling the strings in this country. I tell you what, I wish they were, because I imagine Benjamin Netanyahu has a little bit more gumption than Rishi Sunak, but that's a discussion for another time. And I'd say, that is rank anti-Semitism. That is a trope as old as time, that there is some kind of Jewish force controlling the globe. And it basically calls into question the idea that multiculturalism, which we hear all the time, has been an overwhelming success story. So I said, if these numbers are anything to go by, we've got a storm brewing, and it's not just teacups that'll be rattling. And I do mean that. I think we could be facing really, really dark, worrying, troubling times. And I wonder how many times we're going to ignore the sort of clarion calls before something serious happens. And that's not to say that serious things haven't already happened. Of course they can. The first thing that comes to mind is, I'm afraid to say, the Manchester Arena bombing. That for me will forever stick on my mind as the most awful episode our country has endured, certainly in my lifetime. But just to refresh people's memories, 24% think Hamas murdered and raped on October 7th. That's only 24%. It has been proven by independent bodies that this did take place. 46% feel sympathy towards Hamas. That's almost half. 52% want Prophet Muhammad made illegal. That is bringing back blasphemy laws, Sharia law and all the rest of it. 46% think Jews have too much power over policy. So this all led me on to think about what's going on in Britain at the minute. And of course, we've spoken in the past about, during Easter, the way in which there were Eid displays, Ramadan displays, I should say, in central London that were paid by some billionaire, but they were still allowed to go ahead by Westminster Council and, of course, under Mayor Sadiq Khan. But then yesterday, and I'll let you come in after we've watched this video, yesterday, and not many viewers will have seen this video, by the way, because the media just haven't been covering it. I don't know if GB News has yet. I'm sure they will. Where during Eid celebrations last night, there was a riot. Police coming out in riot gear, things being thrown, missiles being thrown at them, all the rest of it. And it's got no media coverage. And I said, I bet you my bottom dollar, if they were white skinheads, that there would be hell on. In the media, there would be hell on with the police saying we're in the throes of fascism or something. But let's watch the video.
Get back! Farida! Hey! Zicir давай, матера угра!
So that's, you know, Eid night in Southall Broadway in London, and complete chaos there, criminal damage like you wouldn't believe, people dancing about like they're having a really good time and enjoying themselves immensely. Someone's just commented saying the sound is appalling, by the way, so if you can't hear me, let me know and I'll turn myself up. I've never been told I'm quiet before, so there's a first. But these are deeply worrying things to be happening on the streets of London and getting precious little coverage, Chloe.
This is, yeah, it's really shocking that this has received so little coverage. I hadn't even seen this video until you showed me, which just goes to show how little coverage it is getting. This is really horrifying what is happening to our streets. I used to feel proud to live in London and happy to live in London, thinking that this is one of the safest capitals that you can live in the world, but that is very rapidly changing. And as you saw there, you had individuals in the crowd throwing things at the police, which is just absolutely unacceptable. I know that many people are not happy entirely with how the police conduct themselves and how they police Britain, but to be throwing things at them is just completely unacceptable when they are there trying to do their jobs. And you showed us that poll just before the video. That's absolutely horrifying that nearly half of the Muslims that were polled are amicable to Hamas, and only 24% believe that they raped and murdered. That this is scary. And I'm not sure if it was in that poll or in another poll, but I think it was around half of Muslims polled want Sharia law in Britain or something like that, which is really, really horrifying. And it kind of dispels this myth that the problems we are seeing on the streets are, you know, it's only a teeny tiny extremist section of the Muslim population that hold radical ideas. But what these polls are suggesting is actually it is a pretty large number of them.
Yeah, and I mean, Chloe's right, Alex, that this isn't an ice. You can no longer say that these are pockets of a few bad apples, basically. That's the narrative that always happens. You know, you can't tar everyone with the same brush. Now, I'm not willing to do that. I'm sure there are many examples that you could list of Muslims that contribute to British life and British society. But it's clear to me that when this sort of thing's going on in the streets of London, when we've got polls like the one we've just seen earlier this week, that there is a real issue. And is it deliberate, Alex, that the media simply don't want to talk about it?
Yeah, on your last point, Darren, it's really obvious that the media are covering it up, so to speak.
By the way, I must say, Annette has just commented saying it's just been on GB News now with Nigel Farage. She said she saw it when I posted it earlier, but I just want to give GB News a credit there. They did actually show it, but they're the only ones, Alex.
Yeah, well, it's a testament to GB News to be the one to show it. I'm not surprised because GB News, as you know, Darren, we talk about the difficult topics on that channel, and we talk about things that the mainstream media are unwilling to talk about because they're fearful, and their editorial teams more likely are fearful of being called racists and fearful of upsetting their lefty woke tribe. And this is a real problem because unless we start talking about these people and how they're behaving, we're never going to solve the problem. You have to remember they are still a minority group across the country. And if British Voice comes together and says, look, we've had enough of this, either act like British people do and have some values and adhere to our culture and adhere to our values of peaceful streets, and don't go out smashing up police cars unless you have a very good reason to. The only good reason I've ever thought in recent times maybe have been the poll tax or something similar, where British people were really going to have a tough time. There are some times where you do need to go and actually show the government who's in charge, which always should be the people. But in this occasion, it just seems like it was a riot for the sake of there being a riot. And that to me is not British in the slightest. We do love a protest, but only when it becomes necessary.
And there's
Now,
a real anti-democratic element as well, isn't there? Because we're seeing this in border policy. We keep voting for border controls. We keep voting to massively reduce net migration. I would currently like it to be zero, to be perfectly frank. We keep voting for that, and we keep being told politicians will deliver it, but they don't. Now we're told, we're going to get onto it later, that a foreign court will dictate our net zero policies. There are so many ways in which actually democracy has been removed from the people, and we're saying we've got concerns with the type of people coming to our country who don't share our values, and for saying that we're dismissed as racist and ignored.
yeah,
This is
but
the
just a
thing,
quick,
people coming in from countries who have
yeah.
completely different cultures to ours, and you're seen as racist if you point out the fact that what is normal in their country is different to what is normal in ours. I keep on saying, sort of aside from the riots, but looking at female safety, that it looks like from the latest data that Afghans are the most prominent group coming across on small boats. And if you look in the Women's Peace and Security Index, Afghanistan ranks 177 out of 177 countries included, were last on the list for their treatment of women, right? But then people will call you racist left, right, and centre if you point out that fact and suggest that maybe these people are a danger to the women of this country. I'm not saying every single one of them is, but you can't deny that.
Of course not. And I actually get annoyed that you even have to clarify that, because of course you're not saying that you're tarring everyone with that brush. But there was this video as well, Chloe, where to highlight your point, Alex, keep that point in your head because I am going to let you give it. But this guy here was convicted, an Afghan man, here illegally, had his asylum claim rejected, but was still in the country, and had a human rights claim. And he was convicted of committing an act of outrage in public decency and exposure. Just have a listen to this.
Convicted sex offender who continues to act inappropriately towards women, but was allowed to stay in Britain because committing sexual acts in public in Afghanistan would put him at high risk of physical violence from mob mentality. He was represented by this firm, but the top lawyer in the company disputes any suggestion that so-called lefty lawyers are to blame for the asylum crisis.
I'm sorry, right, but how pathetic that our government are turning around and saying, oh, well, Afghanistan, they wouldn't be all that grateful to have a sex offender turn up at their door. I couldn't give a flying fig. He's not British. He has no right to be here. He's a filthy pervert. Get him out the country. It's not rocket science. And then apparently, by the way, when we were in control of Afghanistan, they turned around and they said it was unsafe because we were there. We can't win. We can't ever have any robust border policy. We have no border. It's pathetic. We're not a real country, Alex.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Darren. And just to come back to the point I was going to make, because it's really relevant. This is 30 years, maybe more now, of unmatched mass migration into this country with no government having any policy on how to assimilate people or who should be coming in, or deciding, are you coming to this country to be part of Britain, or are you coming to make it something completely unrecognizable? Because that is a really big problem. I'm a born and bred Londoner, and I saw some people in the comments here. So there are Sikhs in this chat. There are someone talking about Hindus coming here to live next to these people. And that's true. We do get a lot of people coming to this country, like Sikhs are a perfect example. They come and integrate, and they really adhere to British values. And they are a pleasure. And I love them coming to this country because they really enrich us. They give us something back, and they love Britain. But there are mass groups of people, mostly coming from the Middle East, that never want to integrate. And we have to get to a point where we say, is this an Islamic problem? Is this a problem with Islamic countries whose values of Islam are not compatible, particularly on women, particularly on crime, particularly on authority? Because Islam doesn't see authority of the state as the highest authority. It sees Islam as the highest authority. Yeah. That's a very big problem, and we have to start talking about it. And as a Londoner, when I was born here 33 years ago, London was a very, very different place. Just watching videos back, it was livable. It was a livable, safe city. We're now going to get to a point by 2030 where white British Londoners might start becoming the minority in London.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.